Hi everyone, welcome back into the studio. I've gotten a lot of requests to do some more of the roses along the Painted Simply line and to also do them in that pure acrylic form, which I've been showing you starting out with acrylics, because I do them so many different ways using open medium, extender medium, all different kinds of techniques. So I'm going to walk you through some very slowly here in a beginning rose and with the Painted Simply type of techniques using just acrylic. So what I have here is a board. This is 14 inches by about 9 inches here. And what I do, and just to show you, I use this type of stuff here, which you see. This is what's called a super MDF, or what's called ultralight MDF. It's 1/8 inch thick. And I get it in 4x8 sheets and then cut it down to different sizes. It's wonderful. I don't use this up above like a 16x20 because it starts to get a little bit wobbly, and so that's when I go to some of those thicker 1/4 inch like plies that you see me use. But anyway, so I cut it down to my desired size, and then for what I do here is I give it a coat of the Heritage Multimedia Canvas Prep Medium. Okay, this is a medium that will, it goes in, it fills it up. It's not like a gesso. It leaves the surface a little bit matte so that it absorbs. You get that little bit of absorption to it that I like to paint with. So I give it that. And then I sand it with this type of sandpaper here. This is a 180 grit. You get this right on Amazon or whatever, 3M sanding paper, but it's a painter sandpaper. So it sands up really nice and doesn't make, I use 180 grit because it doesn't make the surface here slick. You don't want the surface slick, because then as you move stuff, like what I do when I move it with my hands or the brush or something, it will slide and pull holes. So I want this to soak into the surface just a little bit. Surface prep is very important to the success of what it is you're going to do. All right, so I'm going to do a rose here. I'm going to turn it sideways, maybe coming this way, and another one maybe coming right down here. We'll have some fun with it. Just a simple, fun little composition. We'll paint it very slow together, okay? And so I have my 6 colors of the Painted Simply out. I have my big brush here. I have a palette type. This is actually for all you beginners. This is called, we have the links. The links to everything I do is down in the video description, okay? So you can go over to an Amazon store and get, like, this is a Liquitex number 5 knife. I like this for most of my painting. And it's called a painting knife because it has this Z bend in it. So your hand holds it like this. And a palette knife is flat all the way across, so there's a difference between them. But let's take, and I want to work with some yellows today. Yellow is a interesting color, very difficult to work with for beginners, and so I'm going to work with some yellows and show you some different ways to get different colors. So we're going to take a little bit of yellow, we're going to take a bit of the red, and then a touch of the black, just a tiny touch of the black here. And we'll mix that together here. See, that makes, I want this in, the red keeps it warm, almost orange, and then the black and yellow makes all your greens. And see this beautiful color that this starts to make here, which is a really deep version of that. And so start to look at that. Maybe I want to take some of this right over here and lighten this up as a base as well. So what I'm thinking as I'm doing this is, and that's real good, drop it right into your black, but is thinking of it more like almost like a watercolor kind of technique too, okay? So I have added nothing to this. I'm just going to take my big brush here, and I'm going to put a little bit of water. Now, sometimes when I want to make something smooth, I will give a coat of water to the surface first. And what that does is that absorbs into the surface, just like you do with a watercolor paper. It moves, and then the color moves out really easy. With this, I want to get what I call a little bit of granulation, which that means I'm going to let the paint kind of dry a little bit as I'm putting it on, and that I can soften later with that mister bottle like I showed you in the cloud lesson, right? So I'm going to take a little bit of this and some water, and we're just going to just lightly push this over the surface. I like that. It's just a very light application here. I like to leave a little bit of the white of the canvas showing through, a little bit of interest there. Now, And if you want it softer, just add water. You can even use that mister bottle that I showed you with the clouds. We can mist that surface there. Now, I'm going to add some contrast for our yellow rose. Some of this color down here. This is kind of what I'm thinking. And I'm going to visualize that rose right down in here. So I'm just going to, this is the contemporary way I love to paint. So I love to just take stuff off of this. And when I paint contemporary, I like a strong horizontal and a strong vertical here. And I leave this very much, and you know, some different taps of stuff, very much impressionistic. That's how I like to look at that. So I put it on. It's quite heavy here. I have some heavy color if I want to really define that heavy right in here. And what does heavy color do? It's going to allow me to do more contrast if I want to. But I'll put some heavy marks of color right in there where I'm going to have that rose, so that rose can play up against this. And if you want something softer, you want to soften something out here. Say you get too much, you can just mist that like I did with the cloud and I showed you, and pull that down. You can use a little more water in your brush and pull that down. There's just all kinds of ways you can do things, okay? And but add some, you know, add some interest. Now, this is overall very warm, and the yellow would be very warm here. So maybe I want to add, and I think I do, what I call sparks of color. So if it's very warm, and this yellow is very warm here in tone, especially because of this red. This red is one of the warmest reds you can get. Maybe I want to add a little spark of blue. So blue and some white here. And if I want this to soften, maybe not quite so much, I'll add a little bit of this to it. And so I'll still get kind of a little blue mark of it here. And I just want some accents of it that goes through here. I don't want a tremendous amount, just to say we did it a bit here, just as a cooler accent through the painting here. And I think that will work nice. So, and I like, you know, for all you beginners, one of the reasons, I mean, I'm using the 2-inch. This is a Fusion brush, very soft brush. And I use the 2-inch because I use corners and edges of it as I'm painting something, and that gives you different kinds of marks. So when you look here, see how all these marks are a little bit different from each other. And that's what I like to have in a casual painting that I like to do. All right, now we'll come down here. And this is my number 10 Fusion Filbert Flat, one of my favorite ones to paint with. And we're going to come in here and we're going to find the shape of the rose. So, and I want a yellow rose with maybe some violet centers and stuff. So I'm going to take some white and some yellow, some of this right in here. A real soft, I want to come up. So what I do is I decide here on my rose, I want basically this rose to go from white areas into more of these violet areas here. And if you're very much a beginner, you can set this all up. Let's just take some of this red and violet here together. So you can go from here, and then what you're going to do is go all the way to white down here. And so you create in between here what we call halftones here. And so these will be other tones that I can use within the rose here that would be very pretty. So my rose is going to come along right in through here and into the whites, hopefully. And so sometimes it's good for you to just put that on your palette and kind of visualize it. It'll stay wet for a few minutes, not forever, because there's nothing in it. I mean, you can mist it to keep it wet. You can add a little extender, but we're going to paint this all acrylic. So I'm going to take about halfway here, what we call a halftone, and I'm going to come right in here, and I'm going to put in, the rose is kind of a rounding shape, so I'm just going to come in here, and basically it's almost like the circles, finding the circles here, and I don't want to do this huge because I want this to be a simple, fun little painting. And to get a real casual rose, you want to use as large a brush as possible. You don't want a small one, because what happens is The small brush causes you to stroke and stroke and stroke and stroke. And those little strokes, if you're like me, a left brain painter, those little strokes line up. And what happens is it starts to get stiffer and stiffer and stiffer. So a big brush, you can't work too much. So you have to learn how to paint it a little bit quicker. And each mark covers more area, so you don't have to do as many marks. Now, so there's this rose here. Let's take and see how it's a circle, right? Let's come down right over here and maybe make like a bud or another one that's going to come right off over here. Sometimes I cover up this background, and I really don't like to, because I love how the background looks, but I think that would be pretty, almost a smaller, almost a bud's type. A bud heads more to an oval, so we can look at that. But so we'll put that in there, okay? Now, let's come right over here. We'll add just a bit of water to my brush, some of that yellow. Let's pick up some of this red and violet. And what I'm going to do is slide this onto the side of my brush. So when I put it down here, I have it all the way across, but you can see it's heavier on one side. And I'm going to turn that heavy side right about in here. And what's good is just come in there and put a dot. That would be like the center of your rose. Where do you want that center of that little rose there? Right back here, lift up into this area here. This would be a little C shape here. That would be the bowl of the rose, starting to bowl. So that's right about where I want the center there. So I'm going to pick up some of this color, and I'm just going to touch it heavy, a little circular motion. Small little circular motion here. I lift the pressure now on my brush so the color is not depositing as much, and you see it softening as it comes up out of that area. What I want is it to be real heavy here, and so it's more like taps and little marks. What I'm doing is honestly creating the idea of little petals. Now I'm going to put in a little more red right over here. I think that's pretty. Let's tap in a little bit over here. Softer little mark. And just kind of tap a half circles all the way around. And I can put a bit more dark right in here in the center. So I pick up just a heavier touch of that red violet. And you can see that is what really creates your rose. That deep center and going soft coming out. Now, let's soften this. Maybe a little yellow into this, so I'm not quite as deep a dark color on the bowl shadow. This is the bowl shadow here, and I'll just softly put some of that around. Sometimes I'll just go ahead and shadow like the whole lower part of a rose here, so we can put quite a bit of shadow right out over here. That helps quite a bit there, okay? And so what I've done is, what I always tell all of my beginners and stuff is, a rose is a set of circles. There's one circle, here's two circles, which is forming that center, and then here's three circles, which is forming the bottom of this bowl here, okay? And so here's one circle, two circles, three circles. So I'm painting basically in circles. But what I don't want to do is what you don't want is this, too much dark all the way out here, because that pulls your eye out of that center. So we don't want to have that. So we'll push that. And I love to do this. And I'm right-handed, but I love to paint and push color with my left hand because it's more casual than my right hand. And so my right hand always does the mark perfectly. My left hand doesn't. And so I love to paint with my left hand when I'm doing a casual painting. So now I'm going to pinch wipe my brush here. I'm going to leave some of that color in there because that's going to help me make intermediate colors. So I don't want a perfect yellow yet, okay? Intermediate colors. I want to put just a bit more of this color right out here, okay? Right out by the bowl of this rose, and see, I can use it all different kinds of ways. I hit some red there. I'm just going to let that happen. I hit some red, and see, if that happens, I just let it happen, and I'll hit a few more little colors here. Boom, like that. Up and around. Okay. Now, let's come in. And what I'm going to do is set up some of my lights. So I'm going to come back up over here to the whites, not pure white, a little bit of yellow in it, and pick up, what I do is I pick up this edge. See this little edge? I pick up this edge, and I'm going to use this first to draw the light color right across the top here. Now sometimes I'll go ahead and hit that center, but I draw a little bit. So here's that circle. So you can see it's small. I don't come all the way out here. That'll flatten my rose. I'm thinking of the little bowl of the rose, and I'll pull down a bit here, but I like to leave that little edge that happens when I first grab the light. Okay. Now I'm going to wipe just a bit of that extra paint off, and I'll come over, pick up that edge, and let's pull it down here. Now there's a little bit of pink there, see? Sometimes, and it's still wet, so sometimes I'll go up like this and grab into that pink and pull it down the side of the rose here. Just light little pressure. This is what the fusion brush is designed to do, that light pressure, and it just builds this ever so softly here. It's really nice. And let's maybe put a little more light right in here. So now I can see the front edge of the bowl of the rose there, which is what I like. I'm going to take this white with a little bit of yellow in it and maybe just pull down some simple strokes here that just suggest the back of the rose. Now, so I have that in there, the backs and the lights, and I'll just take a little bit of water on my finger here, and I'll push this in together so that those colors kind of soft, or do what I call, they incorporate together. See, I just push them together like that, okay? And so just a little bit of water. You can also mist it, but you know, just a little bit of water and they'll come together, and that'll look fantastic. Now before, so you can see, I'm not anywhere near with this rose, but you can start to see its shape. Does that make sense? And I can change a lot of things. One of the things is I know I need a little bit more, so I'm going to grab just a little water. I need a little more shadow, so I'm going to slide over towards the shadow color. I need a little more shadow down here at the bowl of the rose to really give some nice contrast down there. So I'm just going to slowly walk into some of this color. And now I feel the surface is very wet and my color is sliding right along it. But I don't have too much time to play with it because I'm acrylic. Now, can you soften it? Yes, you can let that dry. Remember on the clouds. If you haven't watched that cloud video, go watch that cloud video where I just missed it and then I push it with my finger and it works really well, okay? Now, one of the reasons why I wanted, I'm going to rinse my brush just a bit. Now, one of the reasons why I wanted to paint this yellow on yellow is how do you make this rose come off of this background? And you do it with a technique we call negative painting. And what that means is I'm going to make a softer green. Now, green, you can make bright greens with yellow with just a touch of blue, and it'll make beautiful bright greens. I always like to start kind of olive, which is made from yellow and black here. Sometimes a little bit of blue into it, but I'll make this green. Now, if the green is too bright for me, I add the red. A little bit of red, which is its complement, and you can see how it browns it down. And that's what I'm looking for, is this kind of brownish color here. This won't give me tremendous contrast yet, but what I'm going to do is push a little bit of this greenish color in through here, just a few marks, just pull some marks here, casual, and it just is going to simulate that there's leaves and stuff going on. Maybe I have a little bit of that right out here. See, if I leave a bit of that light right there, I can make that look just like there's a petal. This is what I call negative painting. You're actually painting the background, but you're painting it in such a way that it looks like you're leaving a light edge petal to the rose. This is what I call negative painting, and I have lots of lessons on our other channel for you with that. I'm going to add a little more black, a little bit of blue, a little more red, deepen and darken this down. Let's come right in here and see, I imagine where the edge of that petal of that rose is, and I can leave that edge right there. let's just draw a little one around here. And so you see it's a beautiful way to really paint soft roses right away. And you haven't painted that petal. What you're doing is painting behind it. So I'll pick up a little edge of this green here. Let's just put a little bit right out here, just to say maybe that's that petal edge, see? And I can mist it and soften it out with my finger if I want. I'm going to make it a little darker in here, more towards a brown. So I'm going to go more red, a little bit of black, and a little bit of yellow here. More towards a more deeper brown, maybe a little more yellow into that. Yellow-green here. And let's make a deeper little dark tone right in here. Right in where I want to see that center of that rose. And what I do here is, this is where you would say, oh, let's just take the chisel of our brush and draw out a light little stem there. And see, I love this. This is the running out of paint and skipping on the surface. I can pull back in the other way, maybe a light one right in here like that, that says going to that one right there. Okay. Sometimes I'll take that even a little darker. Sometimes a little bit of the violet, which gives you more of a cooler color. Let's go a little bit of violet into that. Nice cool color, because I can use that real deep in here. Now see, I'm painting the look of the outsides of the roses here without painting the petals, because I'm painting the background. Does that make sense? So it's one thing that I like to show my students right away is painting the background of something like this, because it does half the work for you. You don't need to go in there and work a whole heck of a lot. Some of it's being done for you. Now this is drying up just a bit in my brush, so I'm just going to add a touch of water to it. And sometimes I just put little puddles, little drops of water that I can just touch into on my brush real quick. Let's just put in a little bit of dark right here. Maybe just skip this around a bit, just a bit of motion here. Maybe like a little stem or something's coming up to the other side there, like that. So you can see that dark is really important. So now it's still all really, really wet. If I wanted to, let's say you have what we call in olive painting, and right from the get-go, I try to teach you as much as possible. Some of it you just got to let go, but I want to teach you something that's very important, and that's edges, lost and found edges. So this is what's called a found edge. That's what's bringing it forward. This back here is called a lost edge. You can see it disappearing there. That's what's causing it to go back. But sometimes in the roundness of a rose, I'll want to come back here and lose an edge if I feel that it's too much. And so it's real easy, just like the cloud. I'll just mist that just for a second and just let that sit for just a second, let it absorb in just a second, and then I'll push right here, and I didn't quite get enough on that. So if it still feels a little hard, a little dry, I didn't get enough on there. So I'll let that go right like that. See, then I'll just push, and I'll soften that edge. See, I can soften that edge right there and give you that blurry look. Now, I can, and I show you this, sometimes I'll reach down here. Let's just grab a little green. And I'll push a little bit of that green right in there like that, okay? And then, and this is a fun little thing, and practice. This is a practice board, guys. This isn't the Mona Lisa. This is a practice board. Practice and practice and practice, okay? So I'll take some of this yellow. Let's go back and pick that little edge of white, okay? So I'm going to take that little edge of white, and I draw that, I pull it around and draw that little edge of white like that. See that? And what that does is it starts to make this petal look like it gets a little translucent, see? Because that light plays against it. Let's build this one up a bit right here. We'll pull right in towards that. Maybe pull this in a bit to set that in, see? So now you can see I can use that little edge. And I'm using a big brush with a little corner, and I just lean over onto that corner a bit, and just touch in, and I can start to draw petals. So we'll put some more yellow in this. Okay, this is what I call the petal edging technique. It helps me draw petals. So I'll pick up some more white. Let's draw a petal right down here. And what I do is I head right for underneath that bowl. And then I can widen out the petal here. But as I'm pushing and widening out, I stop at the bowl, because I don't want to go into that bowl too far. Okay, and then I lift the pressure here. Touch the white to the wrong side, but I lift the pressure and let it soften out. And if it doesn't soften out enough, I just take a little bit of water and push, and that softens it out. Okay, so you can see, and you can get a lot of pretty colors. Like, for example, here, let me just take this red violet and a little bit of white. This is a real pretty color. Let's add a little bit of water to this, and let's just add that right down in here. Look at that pretty color. Maybe a little bit right in here. And then I can soften that, just a little water on my finger, and just soften that around. Just push that tone in there a bit. Now, see right here, that's where it was thin. That's where my finger's dry grabbing it up, because there's not enough paint there, okay? So if you do this and you start to pull up, there's not enough paint there. So what it tells me is I got to get some more paint in there. Let's get some of my yellow, some of my orange right in there. And let's just push that right in there, and then that covers that right back up. That's a pretty kind of orange. Yellow and the red. Kind of that orange is really pretty. So maybe a little bit of that orange right in there into that rose. Just a mark. Let's put a little bit of that and just push it around. See how pretty that is? Just push it around right there. And that's a real pretty color. Now, I'm going to pinch wipe my brush because I had that orange in there. I want to come back to this yellow. Okay? And I'm going to build the front of the rose a bit more. So let's go yellow and white. And I need more paint. This time I'm going to have a lot of paint. And I'm going to build the front of the rose here. And then I'll lift the pressure as I just pull slightly curved this way, finding the bowl of the rose. Now over here that paint is still thick, and I want to go back and paint some more into it. So let's just widen that out a little bit more. Lift the pressure now as I go back so it softens out, right? Now, I can take my finger, or I can rinse this brush for a second, like I did with the cloud with you. Wipe your brush, just a little bit of water, and just pull down, and you can soften that around like that, see? I can soften this petal right up into the top of that one right there as well, just by doing that. But what I'm doing more than anything else is concentrating on building the front of the rose here with more paint. That's what makes it come forward. So I need more paint. And that's one of the things that we're going to work on as we paint together. We're going to work on building and using paint. Like I always tell my students, it's a lot easier to paint when you use paint. Okay, so now I'm going to put a little bit of this back here. I know it's a little different direction that I did earlier, but kind of like that, just that movement there, okay? So now the rose is very, very soft. I get myself a new paper towel here, and the rose is very, very soft, and I just drug that through my paint. So we'll clean up my little act here for a second. Here we go. Okay, so how much do I want to build this rose up? I want it a little bit more. So I don't want to really get a whole bunch of wet right in here. I'm going to step off to the side here, and I'm going to build some more color, more paint, more white right in here. Boom, right in there like that, see? So what I do is sometimes I'll pull across, and I'll pull down. What I'm always doing is looking for this round motion right in here. My brush work, what we call the calligraphy of the brush, is always in this round motion building the ball. Now let's take a little bit of the yellow, and let's just pull a little yellow right down here. And how would you soften that edge? Do you want to soften that edge? You don't need to soften that edge. But I can just take a little bit of water in my brush very softly, and just pull down. I like that little bit of mark, maybe a bit more. Sometimes I'll just come back and restate a little bit of water here. Restate, what we call restate the shadow again, pulling right up into that, adding some more color to that shadow as well. So now you see I'm building that rose, but I want to get some more yellow in there. And so maybe I'm just going to add some more yellow right in there. Just add some brushwork of it right in there. That looks pretty good. Maybe a bit of yellow right back up here. I like, if it's a yellow rose, I like some areas to just pop off with some yellow. And maybe some yellow and some light color here. Boom, right in here like this. Okay, and I can push and I can soften that. Maybe I want to do another little edge right there. So I just pick up that little corner. I lean over onto that little corner and just draw it right down there, following the edge of that bowl. And I can put another little petal there if I need to. Let's build a lighter petal right up front here. Let's just drop one right in here, stopping at the bowl. And we'll go right into this one a bit, right there. Let's build it a little lighter, a little bit more color. Boom, yeah, I like that. 1, 2, 3, right into the bowl. And then sometimes I'll take, now I got a lot of paint on there and it's going to stay wet, but I can take my brush, a little bit of water, and just soften those in together. See how quickly they soften in together? Light pressure. Use a very soft brush like this Fusion brush, and that's what gives you the light pressure. And what you got to imagine is, here's the stem, your calyx is right here. All of these petals are going to flow into this rose here, and that is going to take you some time to see that. It took me a long time to see that, but you'll eventually start to visualize your rose. Now I'm going to put a little bit more white right up here, even again more heavier color here. I like that. And I'm going to pinch wipe my brush, maybe just a little bit of water. Just rinse your brush real quick, a little bit of water, and soften that down to the movement that I want that to have. Always looking for the round. See, I like all of these little brush movements that start to happen into your rose. I like that. Little quick stroke, boom, right there. And that's pretty. See all the movement that starts to give it. Maybe a little bit more yellow. So, and what I'm thinking is these are pulling down. Now you can pull across, you can pull down, all different kinds of ways you can stroke your rose. But the big thing is you have a rounding circle here, a rounding circle here. Okay, let's not lose our bowl. So let's take a little yellow and just pull through that bowl right there. So you see that nice bowl. Maybe a bit of that yellow right in here again. Just a little bit of it. Just gives a different little look. If you lose the petal, like right there, take the tiniest little bit of white, see? Lean over to the edge and just draw it around to that bowl, and it makes a pretty little thing. And all of that is going to take practice. It's the tiniest little bit of paint on my brush. And I just draw that around and it makes that petal. Let's take a little light yellow. Maybe one more light right in here. And then I'll lift the pressure and let it just diminish right out over here. I don't need that much over there, see? Maybe, I really like the bright yellow, so maybe a little more bright yellow right in there. And as I'm getting towards the end of the painting, I'll just smush it right here. Now I've got lots of paint on the surface here, and I can just smush that around, making a pretty little rose that way. Now I can increase the contrast. Let's take a little red violet here, maybe just a touch of water, and I can draw a little bit of a line, a little more contrast right in here, lift that up into that. Now how do you soften that line? I can rinse my brush real quick and just take a damp brush right over it and soften that in, see? And maybe pull some of it out here, some of it swirling up there, and it just does a beautiful little thing. Let's put a little more shadow dark that had hit some light there. So let's go just a touch more shadow dark right over here. Maybe right in here. That's a pretty dark color, and I like that. Just skip around. I don't like it to be too smooth. Just kind of skip around a little bit here, and that's kind of pretty there like that. Let's go with some of that red and a little bit of white here, and maybe a light little petal, kind of pinkish here. That's kind of pretty. Put some pink color in there. Maybe a little more yellow across the front of this. See, I can just do little brush marks, and that's when I really like to paint the roses. I instead of doing petals, I do this little brush marks and paint what I call the movement. I'm going to come back here, and I'm going to add another little petal right in here. Use that light edge, just draw it in, and let that come right there to that other little petal. You can maybe circle around or give yourself another little smaller idea of a petal in there. You can use like the little edge here and draw like another little mark or little petal. You know, close up your rose a bit. All of that works, you know, just the movement of it there, all of that works. Back in through here, you could add more yellow, you could add more reds. You know, there's just so many things that you can do. Let's take a little yellow, a little white right here, and maybe make edge of another petal pulling in like that. And again, you can soften that with a push of a little bit of water and a push. I'm going to put a little more yellow. So you see, I spend quite a bit of time building the front of my rose here, what I want it to be here. Boom, just like that. And I finally end up with quite a bit of white, making a couple of marks right across the front that I really like that movement. So right down through here, this goes this way. Right down through here, that mark is coming down that way, if that makes sense. Here. But always allowing some of the roundness to come through. And anytime I need a little bit, just a little bit of paint, see, I can draw. I can draw an edge. And if I want to soften that out, sometimes I'll just go in there and just mist that real quick like that, or use the edge of my watered brush and just soften that edge. Just pull down here and just soften that little edge. And so you can use that little edge, just like you were drawing on the petals, use that little edge to draw on some petals right out in through here, and just soften their movement a bit, just to give an idea of some movement and stuff there. Works really nice. Let's put a little more yellow, maybe a little edge of white. I like that out there, but let's just widen this out just a bit. Give a little more oomph to that petal. That's a personal choice there, just like that. That looks pretty good. And see, I just pulled through some of that green. Let's come down here to the bottom. Let's add just a touch of the red to this yellow. And if I want it to brown up a bit, just a touch of the black, okay? And I'll add just a bit of water here. And see, it makes a softer yellow here that I can start some of the, and I'm going to keep the movements here on this one really simple. So more yellow, a little bit of white. So I'll come right out to here so it sits over, and I'll lean over on the edge and I'll draw the edge of that petal. Lean your brush over and then lift the pressure on your brush. Don't press quite so hard. And as you come back here, just put on whispers of color that you can just push there and soften so you get the idea of petals. Let's put a bit more here, right up here. And let's just soften that out here with a touch of the water in my brush. So I rinse my brush real quick, You can see I softened that out with a little water. Let's take a little red and a little red violet. Maybe a touch of yellow in there. And we'll just restate some of the bowl. Now, I can just do this. Give it a couple of mists there. And just push that around, see? Or I could use my water brush there and soften it as well. But I get a nice deep little shadow there, which is nice. That's a pretty shadow color. Let's deepen this just a bit. I'll put that on there, and I'll put on some yellow right up here, see? And this is what I love to do. I'm going to take kind of a clean finger and just some water on my finger and just push through for a second here. And not very much. I want to keep some of the movements here. So I don't want to push too much, but a little bit of that movement's really pretty. I like movement into the flowers. So, and that movement you see from some of your brush marks. So I try not to always soften out my brush marks too much. Yeah, that's pretty. And you know, it's a matter of contrast, you know. How much contrast do you want to see in your rose? So as I'm working this and seeing the other one, I'm changing this rose from more light to more yellow. Does that make sense? As I'm seeing it into that other one there. And let's just add, so I went yellow, and now let's just add a tiny bit of white. So you can just keep coming down here. It doesn't need to stay wet. You can just keep coming down here and painting into that here. Let's pull that down. And that just works. And see, I just build that, I build and build that rose. Now, let's come down. Let's put in another little petal line right here. And remember, I slide the brush right underneath the bowl. That's what I like to do. So wherever I start that petal, as I'm coming in, I slide it and stop it right like it's going to the bowl of that rose there. And let's put in a little more light here. This one I'm going to keep very soft. So I put some color on there. Let's put a little more color on there. So I put some color on there. And I'm just going to mist that real quick. Right like that. And then push. And I can push back and forth to get some of that red up and that yellow and get some of that movement that I want. You can push it to round. You can push it to get some of that movement. All of that works really, really well. Okay. Let's come back a little more yellow and white. Not quite as white as we have up there. And we'll just put on the front of this rose. I want to keep this red in there. And so I'm not going to do too much to this rose. Not too much stuff. Maybe a little bit of this up over here. Boom, like that. And maybe a little heavier right in here. Let's put just a little bit more edge of white. See, I can come back and stroke these again. A little more edge of white. Lean over onto that white. Put in a little heavier color there. A little edge right in there. That's kind of pretty. Sometimes I'll take this softer little red orange here and let this just fall away there like that. That makes a pretty little rose. That's pretty. That all works. So now I've got this simulated greens down through here, and I'll take a bit of my black and blue, a little bit more of the black, some of my yellows here. I'm going to add a bit of water. So this is just a nice general green. And I'll come out and I make an oval shape here. So I pull one side, I pull the other side like this, and then down through the center a bit. And I let that sit for just a second so it starts to absorb into the matte surface. And then I take kind of a clean finger and I push from the top right here. I run about halfway and lift off. So I go just like that. And what that does is it takes off some leaves, just the edge of the memory, and I can pull a little bit, I can wipe my finger here and take just a bit of that shadow off there. And it just quickly gives you the impression of a leaf. And I can take a dark line here and just give a little quick line to make it look like a vein line on the leaf. So maybe one or two, maybe a smaller one right in here. Okay, let's add maybe one that comes out this way, oval shape, out like that. Okay, we'll just lightly hit the edge, just lightly hit the edge of that one, right in there like that. Maybe use the chisel end of this with just a bit of that dark and just add the idea of a vein line there with that. That works pretty nice there. Thinner, maybe a little more yellow, a little water. Let's just give the idea of a couple more little almost marks, veins, leaves, stuff here. Soft here. Yeah, like that. Sometimes I love just the movement here. And use a paper towel, pull some of that down. Doesn't have to always be perfect. Let's put a soft. So to get it soft, I just add more water. Almost like a watercolor, you're thinking. Let's push nice oval size here. Sometimes vary the sizes. Excuse me, let it soak for just a minute. And then just pull off, leaving just a little bit of it there. Maybe a mark or two here. Just some ideas of stems. And all of this will come to you as you get more experience with it. Now, I really like this in here. And this was our yellow and red and black. I don't want to go back to exactly the same color. I want it a little different. Yellow and red and black here. And let's just put a little negative painting of that right in there. So you can see that back, just a back edge of that rose a little bit. I could take some of this color right down here, which is what I like to do sometimes. It lifts that rose off the surface. Then I'll take my damp brush right up in here and pull down, leaving, and I can just come back on with that negative little edge there and just add a little mark or two there like that. Maybe some of this color comes in around. So you get a real pretty. See, it's taken me 48 minutes. And so I'm still all well within the blending time of, not the blending time, but it's all within the cure time of that paint. I got a couple hours that you can come back here and mist. I could come back in and mist or add things and take stuff out. As this dries down, I may want to try to build up my roses a little bit more. Or what I like, especially if it's a yellow rose, just to come back with some bright little yellow touches. Just boom. Just hit it right there. And see, that's all right in there. It's all really still wet. But it all depends. Now, how wet's it going to stay? It all depends on where you are. If you're out in the desert and you have very low humidity, the more humidity you have, the longer the drying time of the paints, because these paints dry through evaporation, water leaving them. And so as long as you're always keeping water around them, they're going to stay wet. So that's why I like to have a little water bottle. I can just sit there and just mist it wherever I want just to keep the painting wet. And it'll stay wet, and that'll help. But if you're out in 110 degree weather, and where you're painting in 110, I don't know. But if you're out there or your air conditioner's dried up real well, you don't have too much time. But this will all still be able to be manipulated. And later on, I'll show you other techniques where you can get it, even longer. But you have a couple of hours to work this to do some of those fun things, And it's just like this. Okay, here's my original color that I did an hour ago. See, let me just even take the mister bottle here and mist that. Put some water on it. Let it sit for just a second, okay? Kind of clean up my hands a bit. But then zoom. This will all come, it'll all lift off and come and reconstitute again up into color. Now it's very, very thin right there. So, but you can see it reconstitutes right up. And that's been an hour. And that reconstitutes right up there. Okay. And it started to dry. So when I pulled through the very first time, you see it pull off like that. That means it's starting to dry. But I just work it for a minute, and here comes the color as the water works back into it. Does that make sense? And here comes the color. So you can do that for a couple of hours. There's the color right there, see? But if it's really, really thin, you pull holes really easy. But if it's thicker out through here, you don't pull the holes. It just reconstitutes the color up here, and you get that nice color. But you can see it gets a little bit there, and you have to work it till that water soaks in just a bit and reconstitutes it. After a couple hours, it won't do it anymore, okay? But so I can come back in here and reconstitute or soften or do anything that I want there. But I think that's what I want to do with that painting. Maybe I do like the contrast of a little bit of that dark. I got too much green in there right now. So we'll rinse that out. We'll come in with some red and some of that nice, beautiful red violet here. That's just a beautiful dark. Let's put just a little bit of that right in here. Nice high contrast. A little bit of that dark right there. That works. Maybe a bit of it. A little bit heavier right in there. Boom. Yeah, that works pretty nice. Maybe a soft. I'll come back over here towards my yellows. Soften that just a bit. A little bit pulling out. Just you can play, see? But you got to watch, you got to feel the surface, and you can play only if your colors are on there thick enough. And that's one of the things I always say to all my beginning students and everything when you're painting, is we tend to add water to our acrylics and paint everything super thin. And then it just doesn't work. It's on there. It's like this. It takes a while to get it, reconstitute because the paint's so thin. So this would tear up a little bit. See how it tears up a hole a little bit? But I can work it here. I can work it, and if I keep working it, it will, just like this, circular motions kind of. Here comes the color. But because it's so thin, it'll tear a hole first, and then you can work it up there, and you can work that again, okay? So that's why I say, to really paint beautiful like this, put the paint on heavier so it's not so thin, then you won't tear those holes. And that will take some practice to how much you're going to use. We're all different with our hands. We're all different with the amount of pressure and stuff that we use. And so that's just all going to be different. But there's a quick, fun little painting for you. I could put a little more dark contrast right in there. Maybe soft green and the violet. Let's try just a little bit more of that brownish, a little bit of black, brownish kind of color. That's kind of pretty, that one right in there. And just a little bit of that pulling down right in here. Take away some of that darker green. You can see it just changes it a bit. You could use that as a little bit of that. There, that's kind of nice. There. I love coming back through my painting and adding the little movement, sparks of movement. That's what I like. But sometimes I'll come out, like if I have a brighter yellow, maybe I'll hit right in here with a little bit brighter yellow, and I'll hit some right out here. So that color carries through, so you see some of it. And these are what I call the little sparks of interest, of color that you pick up. And some really great, wonderful artists did that with the alla prima. What's called alla prima. What I painted on here is alla prima. It's the overall technique is called alla prima, but we did it with water instead of doing oils. A lot of alla prima artists are oils, but you don't have to be. You can paint alla prima with acrylics if you understand them. Okay, we'll talk all about that. But your rose is 3 circles. There's 1, there's 2, there's 3. And all I want you to do is, you don't have to paint beautiful roses. What I want you to do is practice 3 circles, practice the edging technique, practice putting more color up in here into the front of your rose, and then pushing it around so you get all of this lovely little movement into your rose. That's what I want you to practice. And that movement, guys, takes paint. And using the right amount of paint takes practice for you to figure out. Now, your hand is different than mine. So you might have to use more paint than me or less paint than me. You know, my hand is, you know, it's going to vary by how much hand and pressure and all that you use. Or if you don't want to use your hand, use your brush like I showed you in the cloud video. So if you haven't watched that cloud video, get over there and watch that cloud video so you see how I manipulate the edges, because those are just like the edges of the clouds. See? All right? Okay. Kept it under an hour. We did a good job. Thank you very much. Now, if you want to see a lot of lessons like this, the acrylic and working flowers, peonies, tulips, all this kinds of stuff together, working lessons like this, because I had that request, and matter of fact, I pinned it to the top of the cloud video from that one lady, pinned it to the top of the cloud video because she's saying, can you do like the 30-minute roses, to teach us over here on Paint It Simply. I can do that. That takes a lot of filming on our studio part, and if I get enough likes and shares and support, I'll do it. Okay, but if I only get 5 or 6, hey, that's just not worth our time. It takes a lot of studio time to do that. So if you want to see something like that, get some comments in there and help us with the channel, okay? And I'll do that. I've got so many people ask so many things, and I go off of what your comments are. I don't always answer your comments because I don't have time to answer all of them, but I read every single one of them, every one of them, okay? All right. Hope you enjoy. That's a fun little page, and I'll see you on the next one. Okay? Bye-bye.